Imagine a plant that's so aggressive,
Right.
like so desperate to climb and expand that if you just turn your back for a few days, it might literally swallow your front fence whole.
Oh, yeah, it happens faster than you'd think.
Right. Well, that is the Rangoon Creeper, or Combretum Indicum. And welcome to our deep dive. Today, we are examining a single, really fascinating source.
It really is a unique piece of writing.
It is. It's a garden journal entry. The title is Notes on Gardening, Part 915, Revisiting the Rangoon Creeper. And it was written by an author named Ang, published on June 4th, 2026.
And you know, the mission for our deep dive today isn't really just about horticulture. I mean, we are exploring the anatomy of a decision.
Yeah, a really agonizing one.
Exactly. We're taking a magnifying glass to the meticulous, sometimes like overly analytical thought process of a dedicated gardener, someone who is just trying to decide whether to cultivate this highly specific, demanding plant.
Because it's not a simple choice, is it?
No, not at all. It's a study in weighing constraints, right? Striving for optimal conditions and just dealing with that universal tension between perfect planning and, well, just going for it.
And I want to say right up front to you, the listener, even if you don't have a green thumb, like even if your only experience with plants is accidentally killing a plastic fern.
Which is hard to do, but it happens.
Oh, I've done it. But you will totally relate to this because it captures that feeling of wanting everything to be perfect before you make a move.
Yeah, that hesitation.
Right. But we have to start with the timeline here to really establish the stakes of this dilemma, because Ang notes in this journal that they have been thinking about the Rangoon Creeper for, quote, many moons.
Many moons. It's almost poetic.
It is. And they explicitly mention that this entire saga began way back in part 620 of their journal.
Which is just a staggering amount of time when you think about it.
Right. Let that sink in for a second. We are reading entry part 915. So hundreds of entries ago, Ang first saw this plant and decided they needed to hold off for, quote, evaluation purposes.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Wait, I think you mean I should unpack this.
Oh, right. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because as someone reading this, leaving a decision in limbo for hundreds of journal entries, I mean, it feels a lot like leaving a pair of really expensive boots in your online shopping cart for a year.
Oh, the online shopping cart limbo. We all know it.
Right. You don't buy them, but you don't delete them either. You just keep revisiting the page, looking at the photos, waiting for this magical internal green light. It's not just a passing whim. It's a careful, calculated evaluation.
What's fascinating here is the incredible patience and dedication shown by the fact that we are on part 915 of these notes.
Yeah, that number is wild.
It really is. I mean, it points out how this reflects a broader approach to knowledge. Ang is gathering longitudinal data over those many moons rather than just rushing into a commitment.
So it's not just procrastination.
Well, no, I'd argue Ang is operating on a different psychological level here. In, like, cognitive behavioral terms, you've got satisficers and maximizers.
Okay, what's the difference?
A satisficer finds an option that meets their basic criteria and just goes for it. Like, this is good enough, I'll take it. But a maximizer, which Ang clearly is, they need to be absolutely certain that every possible variable aligns perfectly before making a move.
Ah, I see. So the metaphorical shopping cart isn't just about putting off the purchase.
Exactly. Leaving the plant on the shelf isn't avoiding a decision. It's an active, ongoing evaluation of their own capacity and the environment.
But that evaluation of capacity, it hits a very literal roadblock in this newest entry.
A physical roadblock, yeah.
Because Ang writes about this recent field trip where they run into the Rangoon Creeper again, and once again they walk away without it. But this time the reasons are purely practical.
Right, the logistics of the haul.
Yeah. First, Ang notes that they had already gathered enough other plant specimens for evaluation from their field trip that day.
Which is fair. You can only care for so many new plants at once.
True. But second, there was literally no space left in the car boot or the trunk. It was completely full. And Ang specifically points out that this particular Rangoon Creeper they were looking at was quite large.
Like, how large?
Roughly the size of a small shrub.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that completely alters the logistics.
Yeah.
A small shrub isn't something you can just tuck under your arm or put in the cup holder.
Here's where it gets really interesting. You'd think a true plant enthusiast would just make room, right?
I think so, yeah.
I mean, come on. We've all been there when we really want something.
Yeah.
You play that high-stakes game of Tetris with your car boot, you shove the groceries to the side, you fold down the back seat.
You make your passenger hold it on their lap.
Exactly. If you truly want this plant after waiting since part 620, you make it fit. The fact that physical reality ultimately vetoes our ambitions here, it feels almost like a convenient excuse.
I see why you'd say that, but I look at it differently. These logistical details illustrate a really disciplined approach to evaluation.
Discipline how?
Well, Aang isn't holding plants. They respect their own capacity limits. And they respect the physical reality of the specimen's impressive, small shrub size.
So shoving it in the trunk would be a bad idea.
Oh, for sure. Shoving a small shrub into a packed trunk, you risk snapping branches, damaging the root system. You'd be subjecting the plant to severe physical trauma before it even reaches the garden.
That makes sense. It's like a profound respect for the plant itself.
Exactly. When Aang says they already have enough specimens for evaluation, they are acknowledging their cognitive and physical load. Taking on more would just dilute their ability to properly observe what they already bought.
And that respect is everywhere in this journal, especially when Aang starts debating the fundamental nature of the plant's form. Which brings us to this genuinely fascinating aesthetic debate.
Form versus function. This is where it gets really deep.
Yes. So Aang writes about the growth habits of this specific plant, and they acknowledge that technically it can be trained to grow as an upright shrub.
Right, you can prune it heavily and force it into that shape.
Yeah, but Aang insists that it needs to be grown as a climbing vine to ensure optimal growth and the, quote, best aesthetic look.
The best aesthetic look.
Right. And Aang even mentions observing numerous other gardeners who planted in their front yards as a climbing vine, and they do it with great success.
So what does this all mean?
Well, I think keeping the Rangoon Creeper as a shrub is kind of like buying a high-performance sports car, but only driving it in a 20-mile-per-hour school zone.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, it works, technically, but it's not what it's meant to do at all.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we're exploring the tension between forcing nature into a convenient shape, like that upright shrub, versus providing the environment for its true optimal expression.
Which is the climbing vine.
Exactly. Because think of a climbing vine, like a tightly coiled spring. A vine's entire biological imperative is to reach upward, to stretch out and access higher levels of sunlight.
Right, it wants to climb.
Yes. So when you prune a climbing vine into a shrub, you aren't just making it smaller. You are forcing the plant to constantly expend all of its energy fighting your constraints.
Oh, wow. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, it uses its resources to heal the pruning cuts and create dense foliage, rather than producing those spectacular, cascading blooms it's actually known for. You are storing kinetic energy that the plant desperately wants to release.
So you're constantly fighting the plant's literal biology.
Precisely. Aang recognizes that to see the Combretum Indicum at its absolute best, it needs the freedom to climb. Managing it as a shrub might fit a smaller space, but it robs the plant of its true purpose.
Which brings us to the ultimate hurdle in this journal. Aang knows the plant needs to climb, but it also needs something else. Something Aang admits they cannot currently provide.
Ah, yes, the environmental roadblock.
Right. In the journal, Aang explicitly states that the primary missing ingredient is a good, quote, microclimate with full sun exposure. And that is essential for the creeper to thrive.
The elusive microclimate. This is where the maximization strategy really hits a brick wall.
Okay, I have to stop you there.
Okay.
Because as someone representing the listener here, why does the concept of a microclimate matter so much when evaluating a plant? Can't you just water it more or give it fertilizer?
That is such a common misconception, and this raises an important question. How does a microclimate actually dictate success?
Yeah, break that down for us, because I just buy premium soil and hope for the best.
Well, you can change the soil, you can add water, you can dump all the nitrogen fertilizer you want onto the roots, but you cannot fake the sun.
You can't out-fertilize a dark corner of the yard.
You really can't. A microclimate is the specific, localized weather and environmental condition of a tiny area. In this case, a very specific patch of Aang's front yard.
Okay.
And the Rangoon Creeper requires full sun exposure because sunlight is the actual engine of its metabolism. Without that direct solar energy, the plant cannot photosynthesize at the rate required to support its aggressive climbing.
So it won't just be smaller, it'll actually be unhealthy.
Exactly. It'll be fundamentally weak, structurally compromised, and highly susceptible to disease. The microclimate is the baseline infrastructure.
Okay, that makes sense. But what really impressed me is how Aang arrived at this conclusion. They didn't just stand on their porch, look up at the sky, and guess that the sun was wrong.
No, they were much more rigorous than that.
They really were.
Yeah.
Aang deduced this by evaluating another vine species entirely, one that was already growing in their front yard.
the control subject.
Yeah. By observing that existing vine, Ang proved that the area simply lacked the necessary sun for any climber to thrive.
And I have to praise Ang's scientific method here, using past evaluations that other vine as a control to accurately predict the failure of the Rangoon Creeper in that specific spot.
It's brilliant.
It really is. They didn't rely on assumptions. They relied on empirical evidence. It's an airtight process for everyday decision-making.
It's completely bulletproof.
Yeah.
Ang has built this logical fortress against buying this plant. Let's just review the evidence presented.
Okay, let's hear it.
1, there's no space in the car, and shoving it in causes trauma. 2, the plant is huge. 3, it demands to be a climbing vine, so you can't just trim it into a shrub. 4, it absolutely requires the metabolic engine of full sun.
And 5, the empirical evidence of the control vine proves the yard does not have full sun.
Exactly. Any rational person looking at that data set would finalize the decision right there. The constraints are too high.
The decision makes itself at that point.
Right. Which is exactly why the final sentence of this journal entry absolutely blew my mind.
It is quite the twist.
After hundreds of journal entries, after many moons of waiting, after laying out every logical reason why this is a terrible idea, Ang reveals their ultimate resolution.
Which is?
They write that on their next trip, once they have cleared enough gardening areas, they will finally give the Rangoon Creeper a try. Quote, even if the microclimate isn't quite optimum.
It's the great leap of faith.
I mean, I was just so surprised. It's so funny to spend months of logic talking yourself out of something, only to finally say, let's do it anyway. Why does a meticulous maximizer suddenly throw the evidence out the window?
Well, I think we have to analyze this shift carefully. Because eventually, evaluation must move from theory to practice.
From journaling to actually planting.
Exactly. From observing neighbors' yards to digging in your own dirt. Ang realizes that waiting for the perfectly optimum condition can become the enemy of simply experiencing the process.
So they're accepting that the plant might not reach its absolute peak potential.
Right. But they're deciding that a suboptimal experience is better than no experience at all. If you only ever run experiments in a perfect vacuum, you never learn how things adapt to the messy reality of the world.
That is so true.
By finally clearing space in the garden, and I mean mentally as well as physically, Ang allows themselves to see how this resilient plant might surprise them, even in a flawed environment.
It really is the gardener's leap of faith. And wow, what a journey we've been on today with Ang and the Combretum Indicum.
It's been quite the ride.
To briefly recap, we started with the physical limits of the car boot. We moved to the aesthetic debate of vine versus shrub. We hit the brick wall of the missing full sun microclimate.
And finally, we arrived at that decision to just clear some space and take a leap of faith.
Right. And so to you, the listener, I want to ask you directly, where in your life are you endlessly evaluating because you're waiting for an optimum microclimate?
That's a great question to reflect on.
Where are you leaving things in your mental shopping cart, convinced that the conditions just aren't perfect yet? Remember the value of just clearing some space and trying.
Sometimes you just have to run the experiment.
Exactly. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over. If a sprawling, sun-loving plant can potentially adapt to a less than optimal microclimate, what does that tell us about the hidden resilience of the projects and ideas we're too afraid to start?
Something to think about.
Definitely. Keep exploring, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.